Steve here with ICRPG behind the DM screen. So if you're a DM and you're in a campaign, how do you go from running this to running something like this without bogging down the campaign? We'll talk about it in this episode. Like and subscribe. In previous episodes, we talked about things like turns and action sequences, how to make those things more efficient in ICRPG. You guys had some great comments that I'll be incorporating into some campaigns in the future for sure. Well, this video is no different in that I really want your input, because although we've talked about turns, it tends to be individual on individual. We haven't talked a whole lot about what I would call hordes, or swarms, so to speak. And to be honest, this book doesn't really have a whole lot about that either. When we're talking about swarms or hordes, what we're talking about are groups of enemies that are going to be 10 or more, I would say, maybe like a dozen, right? And we all are pretty familiar with that. But for example, what's the difference on how you would run a game, say, that, where you've got them all ganging up on one person, versus, say, all right, now you've got the whole party involved, right? So you might have swarms of whatever. They're going to attack different people at different times, and then the party's going to attack different ones at different times. How do you make that work in a campaign setting? Your typical swarm creatures or monsters are going to be things like skeletons. You know, they're going to have one hit point, something like that. But there are going to be a lot of them. There are also going to be things like, in this case, gerblins or goblins, right? So we talked a little bit about them before. But basically things that will come in giant packs. And one of the only sort of allusions to dealing with a horde is one that I found here on the Gerblin on page, 132 in the Master Edition, talking about if they yell for help, that every round or whatever, you roll a 1d4, and that many more of their buddies are going to appear. So it's a little bit of an allusion to a horde, but it's still not quite where we're going. When I think about swarms or hordes of monsters, I can't help but think about this scene from good old Tolkien with the Goblin King, him basically saying, go get them. And all of these guys, although they're cheap, they're disposable, maybe one hit point, doesn't matter, there's a lot of them. Believe it or not, I've actually thought about this from the very beginning of when I was playing D&D as a teenager. And so how do you deal with, making it realistic where you're fighting a bunch of people that are all interacting at the same time and yet not bog down the campaign? That's the problem. And so as I was preparing for this video, I went ahead and I called up a friend of mine, and we just started talking about different ideas. And I think we came up with something that's really quite creative. Caveat: I've never played it, never tried it, but I think it'd be cool. Let me show you what that would look like on the table. So here's an example scenario. You've got our 3 players right here, and they are being attacked and engaging with 10 goblins, okay? This guy right here is surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4 that are attacking him. He's attacking this guy. This guy right here is surrounded by 2 that are attacking him. He's attacking this guy who's also attacking him. And then you've got her over here, and she's being attacked by 1, 2, 3, 4 goblins as well. So that's the setup. Let's focus on one corner of the action. Here we have 2 of our characters that are being surrounded and engaged by 6 goblins. As you know from a previous video on how I use miniatures in my RPGs, I assign each one a color. So I use these 1/4-inch cubes, and they each have their own color representing that character. I just use the minis more or less as a showpiece or just to add a little flair to the table, but I don't actually use them on the table. So everybody has their color, and that's how they're assigned. And now we'll get to how we actually coordinate the action of the game. Okay, here's where we start talking about something that raised a little bit of a controversy on one of my earlier videos when I talked about the idea of pre-programmed action. What you do is everyone at the table decides ahead of time what they're going to do. They're all in this battle together, so you write down on that index card, I'm going to attack that guy, and I'm going to do this. And you don't reveal that till everybody's finished. Everybody gets their action together, and then we reveal it all at once. I'd like to give a shout out to subscriber Turbulent Thing for this next idea. He commented on my turns and actions video and described how at their table they rolled the target d20 and the effort, whatever that may be, at the same time to reduce drag at the table. I think that's an excellent idea. Sure, it may be a couple of seconds, but a second here, a second there, over the course of a 3-4 hour session, you end up saving a lot of time. So understand that concept first. You're going to roll the d20 target and whatever your effect die is at the same time. Now, obviously, if the d20 doesn't hit, this doesn't matter. But essentially, it's all one and done. The key will be in having lots of die in multiple colors so that you can have the same color die matching whatever character you're rolling for at the same time. But let's be realistic. Who among us doesn't want another justification for buying more dice, right? As an added bonus, you get to chuck a giant pile of dice on the table all at once. How cool is that? You'll pair each set of dice according to their color, determine if they hit the target, and determine what damage was done. I can hear some of you already saying, well, that just sounds really complicated. It's really not, so let me just break it down steps so far. Every character has a color assigned to them on the table. That color is matched to 2 dice. There's the d20 for target, and then whatever the damage or effort dice would be, matched to that color. Everybody determines their action, what they're going to do, then they all reveal that. You take all those dice, you chuck them all out at once, you pair them back together, and you see who hit and what damage and who didn't. That's it. It's actually pretty simple. The benefits to this approach, besides, of course, being able to chuck a giant pile of dice at the table, is that it provides a little more realism in how a fight would really go down. It avoids the idea that this guy could attack first, knock him out before he does anything. When more realistic would be they're both swinging at the same time. He might deliver a critical blow to this guy, but not before this guy got to chop him in the arm or inflict some kind of wound. It just seems to make more sense that way. And so I think, again, for realistic sake, especially dealing with swarms or hordes, that's really the way things go down. It's not going to be, he'll take a turn, he'll take a turn, he'll take a turn, he'll take a turn. It avoids all that. It's all just one massive thing. Yes, there will probably be some casualties. Well, there you have at least one creative suggestion on how to handle hordes or swarms in your campaign. Thanks again to Dan out there in Oregon for talking through these things with me, and I would like to hear what you guys have to say. I think this is a very clever way to handle kind of multiple characters, multiple opposers, all at once without bogging the system down. But I want to hear if you guys have had any similar experiences on how to handle hordes or swarms in a way that keeps things smooth and running, where you're not just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for each one, and it just takes a ton of time. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, keep it civil. We're all just trying to have a good time and make this game even better than it already is. Thanks again for watching, and may your dice always roll with advantage.